Oh, okay.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Quantum Action Podcast. We're here to take you to infinity and beyond. And today with me, I've got Shanon Brooks from the Monticello College over in Utah, who's going to tell us all about this amazing college, how different it is, and how important it is, and how it's making a difference in people's lives and gradually in the world too. So, Shanon, thank you very much for being with us today.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
So, you're an entrepreneur. Tell us a bit about your upbringing and tell us about your business experience and how you came about creating the Monticello College.
Sure. I grew up on a farm in Washington State. I don't know how many. I don't know how well your viewers.
Well, most of the viewers are in the United States. Just to let you know.
Okay. Well, great. Okay,
so in the United States, yeah.
Perfect. So we're talking up in the Seattle area. I grew up on a farm and hated it. Absolutely hated it as a kid. Later on in my life, I realized it was a real valuable experience to have, and found myself in alternative higher education after I served in the military, and one thing led to another. And
what did you do in the military?
Yeah, I was in submarines.
Oh, nice. So in the Navy.
Yeah. Yep. In the Navy. Yeah.
Cool.
And so we got into alternative education and just found ourselves starting another college, which we ran for about 17 years. I left that, started this one, and I've been doing this for about 12 years now.
Okay, so you have children yourself?
Yes, I've got 6 children. They're all grown now. My youngest is 22, and we're empty nesters.
So did they go through normal schooling, or did you homeschool them?
No, we homeschooled all of them. Yeah, yep.
Okay,
all of our kids were homeschooled.
Yeah, well, we've got 4, and we've homeschooled all of ours as well. So
awesome. Yeah.
So we're on the same page. Good. So now I gather a lot of the students that come to the Monticello College are homeschoolers. Is that correct or not?
I would say half and half. Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of kids that come here have already done some of the college experience. It did not work for them, and because we're in Utah, of course, a number of our students are LDS, and so they've tried other schools and didn't like it. We have kids from other places around the country that this is kind of a niche program we have here up in the mountains, and so they find that this environment is more to their liking.
Yeah, so one of the core things that you teach is this new economy, which has 5 elements to it. And that's kind of the backbone of the Monticello College, and probably why a lot of the kids come to your college. Can you tell us about these 5 cornerstones, let's call it?
Yeah. So what we find is in the U.S., there's 2 primary prominent concerns that college students have. One is the amount of debt they get when they graduate, if they even do graduate. And secondly, the fact that they can't find a job in the field in which they just spent all this time and money preparing for. So we've solved both of those problems by showing these kids how to do this in a very different way. I would say that the nemesis of America culture right now is all the debt that we're in. So much debt. Everything revolves around debt. Your mortgage, your car, everything. And so we've developed a way, the new economy, for these students to figure out ways to leave college with no debt and have a functioning business by the time they leave. So they're able to produce their own food. They do that here on campus. They're able to build their own home. They're able to develop their own energy source. We're off grid here on campus. And they're able to set up their own business so that they can. The average American in the United States today spends about $5,000 a month to maintain their well-being. And we can do the same standard of living for about $1,500 if you don't have all this debt payment. So that's the idea behind it.
Yeah. Okay. So you teach, one of the things you teach is these classics and the U.S. Constitution, which a lot of kids in America don't even know what it's all about. And it seems to me America, I mean, I don't live in America. I'm outside the U.S. I've been to America a lot. I've also lived in the States, and we'll be moving to America next year, incidentally. Nearby where you are, not further north of where you are, but nearby, a lot closer than where I am now. But yeah, it seems to me that America, which was founded on this U.S. Constitution, is kind of moved away or moving away.
Yes.
And what you're trying to do is trying to say, hey guys, we're here in this blessed land, which so far is blessed, but if we keep going down this route, things are going to change.
Yeah,
So how
that's
important
exactly
are
right.
classics? How important for kids is it to study these classics that you
Yeah,
so you know?
well, maybe I should define what the classics are first, so
Yeah,
your audience knows what
yeah,
we're talking about.
yeah, exactly.
So
Yeah,
we're considered a great book school. The great books are a set of classics. It's called the Great Books of the Western World. So basically, it's the best writing in philosophy, history, literature, anything you could think of, any major college topic of the last 3,000 years of Western civilization. And then as students read these, they engage in what's called the Great Conversation. So they're looking at these major topics. What did people say about them all through Western civilization? And how can we add to that? And how can we learn from all these different conversations that have happened before us? And that's the
yeah,
idea. Um, Incidentally, part of that process of Western civilization, which is talked about in this book, American, is the
yeah,
concept of Georgics. Georgics is the foundation of Western civilization because independent Greeks, independent Romans in the beginning of both those civilizations were what we call Georgic. They were independent. They did not rely on government. They did not rely on anyone. And when you live a very independent life that way, you control your own means of production. You are a very different kind of person than what we have in America today. A lot of Americans are very keen to jump on the gravy train of the government and any kind of funding that comes along, and that's one of the reasons why we don't take any federal funding. We're trying to create a very different perspective.
So your university is completely funded by the students, basically,
Yes, and
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 donors.
donors, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, that makes sense. So that's the definition of joy. So when you say classics, I mean, give us some examples of some of the books that your students are into recently that you're
Yeah.
you're
So
telling.
so anything from Aristotle, Plato, Gibbon, the rise and fall of the Roman Empire, all
Yeah.
the way through the American classics of the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, um,
Hmm.
up into um, more modern writings, Swift, those kinds of things. Just a lot of, and you don't have to read great things that you always agree with, right? You're
Yeah.
looking at how have we evolved or morphed through Western civilization, and a lot of times, Karl Marx. I do not agree with Karl Marx, but we read Karl Marx because we have to understand what's
Yeah.
happened globally, and how we can identify those ideas and then avoid them. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I was reading just yesterday actually that how the Chinese Communist Party are now funding a lot of high schools in America. They're already doing that with
Yes.
universities. I mean, to give you an example, I went to lecture at Lancaster University here in the UK a few years ago, and it's considered one of the best business schools in the country. And I went up there and I talked about my experience in business and that, and I had an audience of about 35 students from all over the world.
Right.
But the guy that brought me up there, he was a big Trump supporter, and he said, I really have to keep quiet here because um, there was a massive Chinese population in the university, and what's happening is that if the teachers start teaching things that aren't in tune with the Chinese Communist Party, they get a knock on the door.
Right.
Well, let's say the head of the university gets a knock on the door saying this particular teacher's been teaching this thing. We're not too happy. Have them change their tune or get rid of them. Otherwise, we'll pull our students out. And of
Right.
course, 70% of the students are coming from there. What does university do? They have to adjust the teaching to cater for these people. And so, what happens to the English kid that's going to the university there? He gets indoctrinated, and the same's happening in the United States. Same is happening in Australia, and so they're taking a lot of these young people into thinking. Well, first of all, eliminating God from their lives, which is a really
Right.
bad thing.
Right.
And then once you remove God, I mean, it's all sorts of stuff goes wrong, as we both know.
It,
So tell me
it,
about when your students come to your university. Yeah, go ahead. Tell me what you were
well,
going to
I,
say.
I was going to say in my book American, there's a chapter on education, and we cover that. We go from the beginning of education, collegiate education in America, to modern, and how we've shifted from the colleges being the bastion of truth and right and divinity to these corporate entities that are doing exactly what you just said, tying into big governments and big corporations for massive funding. That is not the intent, the founder's intent for education in the United States.
Yeah. Okay. So why do you think this is happening? Why is this fall of the Western world happening?
Well, I think first of all, it's because of all these other influences in college, and this started clear back with Horace Mann in 1850s. So it's been a long,
Yeah.
direction this way. One of the things was prior to 1900, if you could Google back in those days, you of course couldn't,
Yeah.
but if you could, when you talked about America or you talked about principles of liberty, and you were to pull up a prominent name, it would have been John Adams, right? And John Adams had a very different view of these things than, say, the primary founder you pull up today would be Thomas Jefferson. Now, I'm a
Yeah.
Jefferson fan, but Jefferson was the one who talked about democracy instead of republic so much, and there's been a long history of a shift away from that. The incorporation of Marxist and communist ideals in the United States, starting with the universities, and we've seen a long history of that.
So let's talk about your book about Thomas Jefferson, the Thomas Jefferson Education for Teens, because
Yeah,
you've written a
yeah.
book about this. So tell us about this book and how important is it to read it and understand it?
So while I was running this other college, we were also heavily involved in homeschooling. We kind of tended to market to homeschoolers mostly. I had a company called Face to
Okay.
Face with Greatness Seminars, and I taught over
Okay.
500 two-day seminars across the United States, Canada, and Mexico. And we promoted a thing called Thomas Jefferson Education, and you can find this book. I think it's tjed.org. You can find that book. In the process of
Yeah.
doing that, we wrote a book using TJED specifically to teens to help them with the idea of understanding that they have a mission, that there's a God in heaven, they have a mission, and their job is to go figure out what that mission is and then go do it. And
Yeah.
that's really the purpose of education. It's the idea of providence, right? There's a God in heaven, and he has something for you to do. Education is the process of figuring out what that is and then preparing yourself to go implement that.
Yeah, this is. I was listening to. You probably read the book written by John Eldridge, Wild at Heart,
Yeah,
and he talks about the crisis of men, and he says men need
right.
three things: need a battle to fight, an adventure to live, and a beauty to love.
Yeah,
And today, a lot of men don't have a battle to fight, meaning they don't have a mission. I
right,
mean, why am I here?
right, right. Exactly. I love that
Um,
book, actually. It's a great book.
yeah, it's. I've been telling everybody about it, these three
Yeah,
things,
yeah.
because I have three boys, and I've been telling them, guys, make sure you got that battle to fight, the adventure to win, and then find it. I mean, my oldest is 22; he's not married yet, and then the beauty to love. So,
Right,
but yeah, it's great, and unfortunately, a lot of this has been lost.
right.
And this is really, really sad. What about your other book? You've already mentioned American Killing the American Dream. So, do you think the American Dream is dead, or
Um,
is it still there?
I think the American dream is on life support and is probably going to die, and we're going to have to resurrect it. I don't think we can restore it. I think we're going to have to rebuild it like a
Rebuild it.
phoenix out of the ashes because we're so far gone, because we have so much government involvement, because we have so much debt, and the average American is really acclimated toward that. We're going to have to face, which is coming. I think anybody outside the U.S. and in the U.S. can see it. We're going to have to face a decline that we've never seen before, and we're going to have to rebuild this. And it's going to have to be a bunch of men who have the characteristics that you just identified, men
Yeah,
and
yeah,
women.
exactly. So tell us a bit about the students that are at your college right now. I mean, how many do you have per year usually?
Yeah, so we're right around 30 or so per year. It's about a 75. It's designed for 75 students. We have about 27 engaged in on-campus programs and about 50 in off-site programs that we do, soil
Okay.
regeneration and all those kinds of things. Um,
Are they
so
all
it's a small.
Americans, or do you have foreigners as well? Do you have foreign kids
No,
come in
no,
as well?
no. They're all Americans because we're not accredited. We were not able to help with visas and that kind of thing, and so we're looking at trying to help some people here and there with programs, but we're not able to help with the visas at all because we're unaccredited.
Okay. Are you doing anything about becoming accredited?
No, no. We the problem with becoming accredited is you put yourself in a position for the government to be able to dictate what you teach, how you teach, just exactly what you described with the Chinese
Okay. Yeah.
situation. So we
Yeah. Yeah.
decide we value liberty much more than we do dollars and approval. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So if somebody watching this from Japan, they will have to, you know, find another way of being able to attend your college, basically.
Yeah, yeah. Contact us and we'll see if we can help you work something out.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, good, good. Now, we both briefly touched on this. The Western world seems to be going down through a crisis. men becoming women, women becoming men. This is a bit of a controversial subject. Um, what can we do to put this straight?
Well,
Do you think?
yeah, wow. Well, we can first tell the
Can
truth.
we?
We
Is
can
it
first
possible?
we I think it is. I'll say it right now. There are two genders. There's only been two genders, and there will only always be two genders. Um,
I'm glad you say
I
that because in Canada apparently there are 72.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh, uh,
Um, I
uh,
I read a article this morning in the Washington Post about a gentleman who won the actually I think it was the Epic Times, who won Nobel Prize for some quantum physics things, and he's talking about how much pseudoscience we have in the mainstream today, climate change, gender issues, all this stuff. Who would have ever guessed that this stuff would be an issue? So I literally ask my students and my faculty that I hire right up front. Look, there's 10,000 colleges in America. If you have an issue with gender, if you have an issue with anything, other than a heterosexual, family-oriented college that believes in God, go somewhere else. Don't come here because that's just not acceptable here.
yeah,
And so far we that's who we attract are the people that we're looking for. Yeah.
yeah, good, good, good. So what do the kids? So you talk about helping them set up businesses. What type of businesses have they set up so far? The ones that graduated from your college.
Yeah, so we have one student that is in the process of setting up a dojo. We have
Oh, okay,
another
okay,
student who's setting up an online school. We have a girl who this was during COVID, but she set up a nanny service, but all online. So all the interviews and everything, because the you couldn't get in contact physically. We have others who are planning to be Georgic consultants. We
okay.
have those who want to run a micro bakery, those kinds of things, market gardening. I have one student who's really interested in running a rabbit business, rabbit fur and rabbit meat. These are all
Okay.
things that have nothing to do with corporate America or sitting behind a desk. These are all very, very real, very Georgic kind of things that provide needs for society. The students I talk to that they're here on campus, especially those who have been to other colleges, what they're telling me is, look, we want to be engaged in business that actually helps society. I don't want to be behind some desk as a salesman selling something that doesn't really benefit society. I want, food or some sort of service that really, really helps people become more independent. So these kids, again, it's very niche, but these
Yeah.
kids are definitely looking for those kinds of business opportunities.
Yeah, because you don't you also you teach kids to grow their own food, and you also
Yeah,
teach
yeah.
them to build a house. Tell us a bit about that because that's very interesting.
Yeah, yeah. So what we're into right now are straw bale homes, and I don't know what they're doing in the UK, but I bet you there's a few straw bale homes or homes made out of straw that are historic, over there right now.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
the ability to build all kinds of different, whether it's stick built or it's cob or whatever, we teach those concepts. We also have a benefit for those who attend this school. When you graduate and you go and you decide you're going to build your home, we'll shut down the college for a week and we'll take all the student body over and help you, basically a barn raising. We'll help you build your home in that week as much as we can do in that week and really give you a leg up. We are very vested in helping these kids become independent and not be part of the old economy, but create their new economy.
Yeah, because you talk in one of the interviews I watched, you talk about buying the piece of land. So going away and working like crazy for 6 months a year, stashing
Right,
away the cash to buy
right.
your piece of land. And then
Yeah,
once you've got your land, then the next step is to build the house. But you're not going to go and get a mortgage. You're not going to do any of that. You're not
right,
using any
right.
debt. You're not lending any money from anybody. Tell us a bit about that and how the kids have been managing to do that.
Yeah, so we start here on campus. We've had a number of couples actually come on campus, bring on a 200 square foot. Now, think
Yeah,
of that. That's tiny, right? A 200
yeah,
square foot trailer and live on campus as a couple while they're finishing their schooling. You take that same trailer and
yeah,
you move it onto your piece of property, your inexpensive property that you
yeah,
purchased, and then
yeah,
you put that trailer on there. And now it may be very, very low standard, right?
yeah,
For American standards, but it's free and clear. And that's the idea. When you can start your life out without debt, that changes everything
Yes.
for the future, right? So that's the
Yeah,
idea.
because I mean, freedom. I mean, one of the elements of freedom is having money, so that you know you can do what you want. And so,
Right, right,
as I always say to people, this new thing I've been going on about is telling people, you know, we've got to be aware of what's happening in the world, but we also have to not care. And when I say that, I don't mean it in a horrible way. I mean, as in, don't let the political or what's happening in Ukraine affect your life today, what you need to be doing for your family, like which
right,
means maybe
right,
go
right,
out planting a tree or going and collecting the mangoes in your garden. You know that's going to affect what's going to be on the table tonight. So forget what's
right,
happening in the political arena or out the other side of the world, but worry about your own economy. Make sure you grow your
right.
own economy, because if you do, then you're independent, and now from that position you can help others.
That's right.
Um,
And you can probably tell behind me, I'm actually not in my large home in town. I'm in a 400 square foot tiny home that my wife and I have been living in for 4 years. We believe in leading out, lead from the front. So if we're going to expect our students, graduates, to be in small housing to start with and then build up, we have to
yeah.
set the example. So we built this tiny home on campus with the students, and we've been living in it for 4 years now.
Oh wow! So you built the whole university yourself then? You, your wife, and some partners.
Yes, and a lot of student labor. So the barn, any outbuildings we have, the main administrative and classroom building, that's it's all been done. It's about 15,000 square foot of building so far, and we've done it all here with student labor.
So when you students have to go and buy their own piece of land, do they usually buy it nearby where you are, or is it all locations
Oh
all over
no,
America?
no, yeah, all over the country. Yeah,
Okay.
Idaho is
So what
a
kind of
big location right now.
things do you encourage the students to look for when they're looking for a piece of land?
Well, we go through biodynamics and permaculture here, and so we teach a lot of those concepts. But basically, you're looking for a land that has some wooded areas, it has the arable land, hopefully has some water running through it, or a good possibility of a well. And in counties that have very very limited or zero building codes, which is harder and harder to find right now. So that's one angle. Another angle is and in the Midwest, you can find this. Joe Salatin and others talk about this. Um,
Yeah.
Go find somebody who has a farm that they want to turn over to somebody who wants to continue to farm. There are a number of farmers in America today who won't give their farms to their children because they'll turn them into a strip mall or into a housing units. They
Yeah.
want to turn their farm over to somebody who's going to keep farming it, and so that's another possibility as well.
Yeah, that's very very interesting that you suggest that. So they buy the piece of land, and then they've already learned by coming to your college to build a house, and then I believe you encourage them to build in stages.
Yes, yeah, yeah. That's the only way you can do it without debt, right?
Yeah,
So if you build, phase one is 800 square feet, and you've been living in 200 square feet, that's a four times improvement, and then you just keep going. I myself and my wife and I and others have done this where we've done phases. It's not real fun, to be honest with you, in the process, but when you're
yeah,
done and you have no mortgage, you look back and with fondness on
yeah.
that process. It maybe took you 5 years, but now you live the rest of your life with no debt, and that is a really exciting proposition.
So Shannon, have your children followed this kind of philosophy as well, or I mean, how have they
Uh,
what have they gone on so far?
yeah, I have some who have followed. You're never a prophet in your own home, but I have some
Yeah,
who have
I agree.
followed our advice and some who have not. But they're coming round. So sometimes you have to go do
Yeah,
your own thing for a while and then come back and realize maybe mom and dad were more right than you thought.
yeah, because there's a
Sometimes
lot
that's
of
how it
people
goes.
now. I know in Utah, and Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, that area of America, there's a lot of people building off the grid homes,
Yeah, yeah,
particularly after the lockdowns and that. They're like, well, I think,
right.
I need to be completely 100% sufficient with my energy and my water and my food.
Sure.
I mean, I like what Elon Musk's brother's doing, Kimball Musk. He's building microclimates inside containers, and they're
Right.
growing food.
Yeah.
And I think that's really really cool. So the food that your students grow are using all organic seeds, none of this Monsanto business.
Right. Well, yeah, yeah. In fact, we save our own seeds and use those. It's called land raised seed procurement, and so that's how we do it. We're about 2 years away from never ever buying another seed again. Most of the seeds that
Oh,
we're using next year, for example, have come from our own seed saving programs. Yeah.
so do they just grow vegetables and fruit and that's it, or they're farming animals as well?
Yeah, no, they have animals. We right now we have chickens, goats. We're moving into a milk cow here, but we actually eat. Oh, and rabbits. We eat the rabbits. We collect eggs and eat the chickens, and then we milk the goats, and we also eat goat meat as well. And then we have a milk cow coming on for cheese and those kinds of things. Yeah.
Okay, so it's a whole ecosystem that
Yeah.
runs
Yeah.
on its own, really. That's really, really
Yeah.
interesting.
I know this probably sounds weird to you, but we're trying to go back to the original American independence that the nation was built on. And
Yeah,
if you're going to
yeah,
do that, you have to do these things. You have to do them.
yeah. Well, it's interesting because the British pageant here in England is about to start. In fact, tomorrow my wife and I start rehearsals. We're in it for the third time running,
Oh, nice.
and it's the
Awesome.
story of the
Nice.
first English Latter-day Saints that moved over to America,
Oh,
and obviously they then trekked across America and arrived in Utah. And when they got there was nothing, so they had to chop down the trees and build their own houses
right.
and
Right.
connect it to the river and get the water supply in and all that. So you're kind of moving people back to that kind of independence, which is nice because a lot of kids today grow up in cities and they haven't got a clue of
Right.
where their
Right.
food comes from.
That's right. Exactly.
That's, now you talk about cybersecurity in some of your videos that are out there and AI. Now tell us a bit about your concerns regarding cybersecurity, AI, this whole internet thing that's out there now, and all these monkey business stories they're telling us online that aren't true. Um, yeah,
Well, yeah, to be honest, I don't know that much about that, but what I am concerned about in reference to this is how it influences the young people coming up. I
yes,
talk to, you mentioned LDS, so we have a lot of kids that are using this as prep before they go on a mission or something.
yeah,
And I talk to the parents, and way over 50% of these kids are already addicted to the internet, whether it just be social media or porn or whatever. So that's
yeah,
a big deal. We are going to move here in the next few years to where no devices are allowed on campus. We'll have internet contact,
yeah,
connection, and you can
yeah,
email or whatever your mom and dad on big screen that's open to everybody. Not a lot of privacy there, but no devices. We want kids to understand that this is a tool, not a lifestyle. And so we're trying to create this haven, and every single parent, without exception, that I've mentioned this to, are begging us to do it faster than later because they want their kids in it because we have real big problems out there, in and outside of religion. It's a real epidemic.
Well, I mean, even in business, I mean, I deal with people all over the
Right,
world in my aviation business, and sometimes you get these people texting each other, and then they start arguing via text or via email, and I say, gentlemen, can we just calm down a minute and get on a video call and see
right,
each other and actually talk instead of
right,
texting or emailing?
right,
Because we're going down the rabbit hole here, which we shouldn't be. And
right.
with a 5 minute phone call, we can clear this up. And I'm like, it's like,
Exactly.
oh, and these are adults, often enough people with a lot of money. I'm talking, millions and millions of dollars, and they're behaving this way because they don't want to get on the phone or they don't want to get on a
Right,
video call. And I
right.
and that's because of all this social media and the phones and the texting and whatever. And it's happened. So, it's happening with adults, 40, 50-year-olds. I can imagine,
Absolutely.
the younger ones. I mean, I even see my kids, they're on there. I mean, we haven't encouraged them to use the devices that much, even though unfortunately it creeps in, but we've always been out and about with our kids. But, today, if you're 15 years old, like my daughter, you have to have a phone and you have to be on the different platforms because your friends are, and it's part of your life. The only
Yeah.
thing is you just have to make sure that it doesn't become your life.
Well, and in
Uh,
fact, I have enough kids that have had some negative experiences with that. I see a trend happening on campus of kids going to flip phones, going back to low technology, not high, so they can still receive calls and things, but there's no images, there's no way to hook up to social media. They're doing that on their own. So that's really, really encouraging.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So where do most of your students come from? Are they all like Utah, or they come from all over the US? And
Oh,
how do they
no,
find out
no.
about you?
Yeah, I don't know how they find me, although I still have a presence in the homeschooling world.
Yeah,
That's where we got very well known there. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, Arizona, Utah, California, Idaho, Indiana. if it's outside of homeschooling, I have no idea. In fact, I have a student showing up today for what's called a micro semester. They can come for 26 days. She's from California, and I asked her, and she said, we were just looking for alternatives. We didn't like what was out there. We happened to see your website. So that, sight unseen, and here they come because people who are looking for an alternative.
Yeah, interesting. So someone comes for 26 days. What, you give them credits for those 26 days that goes towards their...
Well, yeah, because we're unaccredited, our credits don't really apply anywhere. So people who come here are not worried about the accreditation or getting credits.
Okay.
They're worried about education.
About learning,
yeah,
learning to build a house,
right,
learning to grow their food. Yeah,
right. I mean, if you're an entrepreneur, when was the last time we used in entrepreneurial ventures, our credentials? Nobody cares. If it's like in IT. I don't care how many certificates you have. Can you actually solve the problems that I have in IT? Same thing here. We don't care about, our credentials. Here, try my bread. Here, try my vegetables. Try my classes that I'm doing, this, Georgia Consulting, all those kinds of things. Try those things out. And if you like that, that's my credential. And we're kind of going back to that.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I mean, I'm never impressed by people with all these letters after their names.
Right.
Because I'm like you. Let's see what you can do. Same with pilots. I get in a plane to train a pilot. I'm not interested in how many hours you have. Actually, I can tell you when the guy sits in the seat, I can already tell you how he's going to fly by the way they sit in the seat. I don't need to know how many licenses they have, where they've flown. I just see the way they sit in the seat. That tells me everything. And 99% of the time, I'm right. So at the end of the day, practical stuff is what counts. As you said, have we got good food here? Yeah. Well, who cares who planted it? Who cares where they studied? It works.
That's right.
What about herbalism? Do you teach herbalism and anything to do with health and that? Do you teach those things?
It kind of incorporated because it's all whole food here and everything. We do use a lot of herbs and that kind of stuff. And if anybody has a sickness or they get hurt, we end up using herbs and things we have here. We don't have an actual program. But a lot of kids will find an interest they have, and we'll find them a mentor on this or that anyway. So, but it's not a specific program.
Yeah, well, it's funny because my wife is a herbalist, and she's always been interested in aromatherapy and herbalism. And then one day I came back from a trip, and there was a catalog in this magazine I got her, and inside the catalog was some books, and she ordered this book called Herbal Legacy of Courage, which is the story of John R. Christopher, who's incidentally a Mormon herbalist, very famous word of herbalism, and he has a school in Springville, Utah. And
I'm familiar with that.
So my wife reads the book. She's really interested, so she starts ordering the courses, and I have to pick the phone up to call the school, and I call the school, and the girl on the phone says to me, "Oh, you're Sylvia's husband." And I'm like, how did she know my wife on the other side of the world? Turns out this girl that answered the phone was a girl that my wife taught on her mission in Italy.
No.
And she had no clue. She worked at the school. So talk about the world being a small place. Yeah. But anyway, we went to the school. We met David Christopher, who's John Christopher's son. My wife went through the whole program. My wife had cancer at one point, and she cured it using herbs. And so that stuff works. So we're big advocates of herbalism and aromatherapy,
absolutely,
technology, all the old stuff that in a certain sense has been lost, but now is being refound, compared to all the pharmacology and all the big pharma thing that's going on at the moment.
My wife does the same thing, and she's taken a number of Dr. Christopher courses, and she applies it. Anytime there's a problem on campus, she's up there with her bottles. We call her the witch of the campus, and it's great. Everybody loves her.
It's called the same thing as well. Yeah, she gets her concoctions out. But it works, and and I think it's important for young people, well, for everybody, to get back to nature. Take your shoes and socks off and walk on the beach, walk on the in the woods or on the grass. Get back to nature, because I think we are. I think a lot of the problems in the world today is because we're moving away from the earth, and this technology, to a certain extent, can become very dangerous because we lose our human identity. We lose our connection with God.
Absolutely.
When that happens, that's when things don't go. We can see that if the Roman Empire fell, the German Empire fell, and the reasons why those two empires fell is the same list of things. that caused the downfall of those two empires, which is causing the downfall of the Western civilization today.
Right. And Toynbee and Gibbons and Durant and others talked about that very issue. It's not a very long list, but it keeps happening over and over and over again. And that's what we're all about, of identifying that that's happening, and trying to save this is not our goal. Our goal is about rebuilding, because I don't think it can be saved here in America. And this is a choice land, and of course we believe that if you don't stay righteous, you end up losing it, like so many before us have. And so our goal is to not even try to restore, but just to rebuild.
Are you familiar with the work of Graham Hancock?
No.
Write that name down, because you'll like him. He's an English archaeologist, but he's not a traditional archaeologist. He's like in fact, traditional archaeologists do not like him, because he's looked at the past, and he said, well, the official, like for example, the ancient Egyptian pyramids, they weren't built by the Egyptians. Somebody else built them, or somebody else told the Egyptians to build them in a certain way, and they weren't tombs. They were used for something else, etc., etc. But he says that it looks like, in one of his recent books, it looks like that, and he's also done a documentary on Netflix, incidentally, about the past. Yeah, and so Graham Hancock is saying that it looks like back many thousands of years ago, there was a more advanced civilization, and it got wiped out. We're not sure why. It could have been a comet or whatever, some catastrophe. And he said, and even today, if civilization were to get wiped out or some major event would happen, the ones that would survive will be the hunter-gatherers. Because let's face it, if suddenly the electric grid were to go down, how many people are going to survive in New York?
Right.
And how long
it's
will
true.
it take?
True.
Yeah. They don't know where to find water. They don't know where to distinguish in the forest what plants they can eat and what they can't. They don't know how to hunt an animal. They know none of these things. And so it's the people like your students that know how to build a house, know how to grow food, know how to recognize the different plants and that kind of thing. These are the ones that are going to survive. And we've kind of lost that a bit by, building all these cities and moving people into these cities. And you're talking about by 2030, more than half the world's population is going to be living in a city. I mean, come on, let's get back to basics. It's interesting to see that you're doing this with these young people. And I think it's really, really, really needed, especially this new generation that have grown up with iPhones as little kids, and these iPads that, they don't really know what where animals come from, where food comes from. I mean, the bananas that are on the table for dinner, where do the bananas come from? Where do they grow?
Right.
What do they do when you eat them? This kind of knowledge is being lost.
One of the best books that we use to help students kind of transition into this mentality is one called 1 Second After. Okay. 1 Second After, and it's a book about nuclear Holocaust, basically, and how a small college town in South Carolina went through it, how they dealt with it.
I've read that. Yeah. When they have an EMP event, and the cars stop on the motorway, on the highway. Yeah, I've read that.
Yeah. And that's a great book. It helps people, get a perspective of the potential. I mean, we have the technology to do that today, right? And so will it happen? I don't know. But if you're prepared for it and you're living a good, clean lifestyle in preparation for it, even if it never happens, you're better off. So that's kind of the approach we take.
Yeah, and I think that's really the way to do this. Don't go be a hermit on the top of a mountain in your hut with your stream behind the hut, and that you need to sort of live a lifestyle, which is good. And if you're off the grid, it's costing you less money. You're growing your own food. It's a lot healthier than the stuff you buy at the store. You're going to be better. You're exercising. You're debt free. Then you set up your business or whatever else you want to do. You can travel and that. But when you get home, you've got everything there. You don't depend on the electricity coming from the. So what kind of you using solar energy, or what to power these?
Yeah. Right now it's solar. We've tried wind, but you have to get so high. It was cost prohibitive for us right now. I'd love to do wind. We have a lot of wind here, but right now everything we do is solar. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the wind thing, we have a lot of these windmills here, and they kill a lot of birds, and they're not as efficient as they try and make you think they are. I think I honestly think I'm a great fan of Nikola Tesla. And I think he was
Yeah,
onto a lot of things.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and there are people. In fact, I interviewed on this podcast. I interviewed a guy who's one of the biographers of Tesla, and he's come out with a recent book and some recent discoveries on Tesla's work. He even did a whole documentary on Tesla. I think it was 3 or 4 episodes. I watched it, the Tesla Files, it's called, where they replicated some of his experiments to see if they actually worked.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they do, So this whole thing of creating energy out of nothing, you can actually do it. So Tesla was onto something, but they just rigged the system to where we are today. But I mean, I think that's coming back, and that's certainly something that I think I would encourage anybody to sort of start looking into, because we aren't
Sure.
on this planet, and we're destroying the planet. And I just think of the Amazon rainforest. Only 2% of the plants in the rainforest have been catalogued. So there's another 98% of plants that we don't know what they are and what they can do. And already the 2% that we know what they can do, it's amazing what it can do. I mean, we think of like the camu fruit, which has got a really high content of vitamin C, simply because it grows in the rainforest where there's no pollution. The roots go far down underground, so the plant is actually getting a lot of powerful nutrients. So it's producing a fruit which has got really high content of vitamin C, in this case, the camu fruit. And then there's other plants in the rainforest. And what are they doing? They're just destroying the rainforest to build more oil rigs, when maybe there is this 0-point energy that Tesla discovered. Maybe that's the way we need to be powering our machines and our flying machines and our homes and our phones and what else. But anyway, you've got to be careful when you talk about these things, because we've got this information to get out there. But anyway, so in closing, Shanon, what would you like to message would you like to leave our listeners and our viewers? And of course, the link will be below to the Monticello College, so people can come on your website and know more.
Right.
So,
well, I'd like to let people know that if you have a child, if you have a student, a potential college student who doesn't fit the mold of the regular college scenario, who wants to do something with their life that's a little different than everybody else, contact us. Come out for a visit, do a micro semester. About 70% of our students who do micro semesters come back as full-time students. We'd love to have them. It's a very small program, a very low student to mentor ratio, and we do a lot of hard work here, and the students really actually enjoy it long term. So yeah, if that fits your bill and you've got a student that fits that scenario, come on out. We'd love to talk to you.
Super. Shanon, thank you very much for being on the show. Thank you everybody for watching and listening. Remember to subscribe if you haven't done so already to Quantum Action Podcast. We're here to take you to infinity and beyond. Thank you.